Hello and welcome to the sewing studio. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to upsize a quilt if when you've made your quilt you've decided it's not big enough. So I've been loaned this quilt by my friend Julie and we went away on a quilting retreat together, and Julie made the quilt top, which was 36 layer cake squares and a 2-inch border in black and a 3.5-inch border in white, and the finished quilt was approximately 58 inches square. And then Julie looked at it and said, actually that's not going to be big enough. So she was looking to see how she could upsize this. So she was able to use some other fabric. So this has all been made in the boudoir range by Basic Grey. So when the quilt was finished at this point, Julie then had 4 other blocks which she's used as her cornerstones, but she had to make a bigger border. So these pieces here are all cut into 2.5-inch strips. So some of them are 2 strips joined together to make a block, and some of them are 4 2.5-inch squares. And she's just made this gorgeous block going all the way round. And then she's put some pieces of this white, which is from the grunge range, and put the cornerstones of the Battenberg block in her 4 corners. And I just think it's a really, really clever way of making the quilt bigger, because if you'd have just said, actually, I'm going to put a bigger border on it, it wouldn't be nearly so effective. So she's quilted it using this lovely wavy line stitch going around the block. She's joined her, I'm just trying to see where I can show you. So she's joined her borders using these tiny little fillets in between, so she could make the border longer going that way. And then she's put this black grunge binding, and then for the back, again, she's used fabric from the grunge range. And I just think it's a really, really stunning example of how you can make your quilt bigger and make it more interesting with borders that are pieced. So I'm now going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to show you how you can make this Battenberg block and how you can make this block that Julie's added into her border. Before I go over to the sewing machine, if you like what we do, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, where you can meet the team. You can see customer makes, you can see behind the scenes, and we'll answer all of your questions in the comments below. So before I sew the block, because this is what you're going to end up with for your middle blocks and your cornerstones, I'm just going to show you how we cut it. So Julie's quilt was made in the boudoir range. So I'm demonstrating today using Minack & Simpson's Newport range. So I'm going to pick 3 of the layer cake squares, and I'm trying to mix the colour up a little bit. So I'm just going to take a light blue, and then I'm going to take a dark blue as well. And the only measurement you need to remember in all of this is 2.5 inches. So you could do this with a jelly roll if you wanted to, but this quilt would use up 40 of your 10-inch squares if you did it this way, and it's easier to work out and there's less waste. So I'm going to cut off a long strip first of all, which is 2.5 inches, and then I'm going to do that again, and then I'm just going to turn my mat round because I'm going to now take 2.5 inches off the short side and another 2.5 inches, leaving me with a 5-inch square. So I'm going to cut that in half. So again, it's 2.5 inches. I'm going to turn my mat and 2.5 inches again. So then we're going to pick out two contrasting colours for the centre. Put these to one side for some of the other blocks. So what I would do is I would cut all of my layer cake squares into these numbers, and then I would put them into piles. So I'd got my 2.5 inch squares, I'd got my shorter strips, and I've got my longer strips. So I'm just going over to the machine now and I'm going to join these together. I'm just finger pressing this now towards the darker fabric. You could get up and press it with your iron, but I'm just finger pressing it, and then I'm going to put these squares the opposite way round like that to create a 4 patch. And then I'm going to join 2 of the darker fabric to either side. And you'll notice that we've got a little bit extra here, and that's because we've lost 1/2 inch in joining these together. So we're going to trim that off afterwards. So I'm just going to press these and trim them before I join the 2 longer pieces to them. Whoops, I've just caught that a little bit, so I'm just going to shave that off there. And then I'm going to join the 2 long sides. And again, we've got these 1/2 inch bigger because of our seam allowance. So I'm just going to trim those off. And there we have your Battenberg blocks. Now, to make the blocks down the side to extend the border, you make a 4 patch again in exactly the same way as I've just shown you. So you make your 4 patch like that, as I've made that centre, and then you need 2 strips. Let's find a different colour. So let's find a pale one and a darker one. And you join these 2 strips together, and then you attach them to here. So I'm just going to the machine and I'm going to do all of that in one go, and then I'm going to come back and show you how that works. And so this was the block that Julie used down the side. So she did 2 strips, a 4 patch, 2 strips, a 4 patch, until she got the length that she needed. So with these need to be 4.5 by 2.5. So just to recap, the centre and the 4 cornerstones you can get out of a layer cake. but your pieced border you will need to buy extra fabric for, depending how wide you want your border to be. So I think this is a great example of how you can make your quilt bigger. I'd like to say thank you to Julie for loaning us the quilt, and I'm looking forward to our next retreat together where I want to have a go at something like this. So as always, have fun, make it your own, and I look forward to seeing you next time here in the sewing studio.